It's not hard to find articles and headlines bemoaning the lack of original content, and such critiques are often aimed at the influx of remakes and adaptations currently populating our screens.
I've spent the past 7 years traveling the world perfecting my craft. You see, I'm something of a magician.
Boys and girls, the chocolate room.
My name is Willy Wonka.
However, adaptations have not only been a part of the film landscape since its inception, but account for roughly half of the movies and television shows we consume. From plays to podcasts, toys to video games, short stories to comic books, and even Twitter threads.
Be ready by 2.
Or whatever we're calling them now. There's no shortage of material from which a film can be adapted, which begs the question, why do some adaptations work so well while others don't? Film is quite different from other mediums. However, like other mediums, it has limitations.
The reason these pictures seem to move is because of the fact that they can be flashed on the screen at the rate of 90 feet per minute.
Movies are visual and therefore limited to what can be shown.
Where's Buttercup? Let me explain. No, there is too much.
That 3-page internal monologue you loved so much in the book turns into a real clunker when the actor tries to recite it in the movie. Plus, let's not forget what voiceover narration can do to a film.
They don't advertise for killers in a newspaper.
Instead, a character's internal thoughts and feelings must be conveyed in other ways. In Joe Wright's Atonement, we lose a lot of the interiority that is so essential to Ian McEwan's novel. However, this is still beautifully conveyed through brilliant performances by the actors, spectacular cinematography by Seamus McGarvey, and an Academy Award-winning score by Dario Marianelli. Another mistake is to believe that an adaptation must be as close to the source material as possible. True, some adaptations are almost indistinguishable from the source material from which they came.
The defendant is not guilty.
Take, for example, No Country for Old Men. We do lose some of Belle's internal monologues, but the Coens truly managed to stay loyal to McCarthy's novel.
Which we had in this case, taking the sort of fundamental nature of the book in terms of its structure and its characters and how the story progressed, and we weren't interested in doing any real variation from that.
However, most of the time, adaptations deviate from their source material, changing minor details like the ending.
Oh my God, your face!
Yeah, I know.
Or turning it into a completely different story entirely.
There's the book. I never read P.D. James' book. That is absolutely brilliant. It's really good, but has nothing to do with what we're doing. What I read was a synopsis that was sent to me, 1 page, and it triggered this idea.
Adaptation is not just about changing the story from one medium to another, but translating it into a completely new medium. In this translation, the film must be able to stand on its own. In There Will Be Blood, Upton Sinclair's novel Oil served as more of an inspiration than true adaptation for the film.
I never felt or realized that I was officially going to adapt the book. I kind of felt like I had this enormous amount of material, the book being one thing, other bits and pieces of a script that I had been working on. So I felt like I was pulling from all these different sources, my imagination as well, and you're just sort of mixing all those things together. And I never really felt like I was attacking it as a straight adaptation.
Sometimes these creative liberties lead to authors disavowing such adaptations.
Well, one movie that departs considerably from the book that's a failure is Stanley Kubrick's The Shining.
Stephen King was so perturbed by Stanley Kubrick's adaptation of The Shining that he readapted the story as a miniseries for ABC.
Are you watching closely?
However, this arguably also leads to cases where the film adaptation is better than the source material it's based on.
Then I'll kill them both.
People don't remember it, but maybe a third, if not more, of the book concerned this young woman, Lucy Mancini, and her private anatomy problems and a love affair with the doctor who fixed them. And I just couldn't believe how low class that was. But that was, not included in the movie, and so it didn't harm the remaining part, which we all know.
But where the real problem comes into play for adaptations is often with the studios themselves.
Dune, I didn't have final cut on. I started selling out even in the script phase, knowing I didn't have final cut. So it was a slow dying the death and a terrible terrible experience.
Popular video games, books, and graphic novels don't always translate to the big commercial movies studios want them to be. Furthermore, these narratives can be quite expansive. Oftentimes, screenwriters must come up with creative solutions in this process of translation. For Arrival, this meant finding a way to visually represent a new language.
Every time I tried to describe in words what this language looked like, I got very dissatisfied. I got frustrated, and I wound up getting longer and longer. And the last thing you want in a script is to write a novel. And I was complaining to my wife about this one night, and I said, I don't know what to do. And she said, show me. What are you talking about? Draw for me. And I scrawled this circular logogram, and I said something like that. And she said, well, there you go. Just put that in it. And I said, you can't, wait, can you do that?
Sometimes it leads to situations where the adaptations share little more than a title with their source material.
My name is Robert Neville. I'm a survivor living in New York City.
And that's not always necessarily a bad thing.
The other thing was it had this very, very strong atmosphere. And you're right, it's not an obvious no-brainer for an adaptation. But as I was reading it, I was thinking, I want to adapt this, but how? And then it was about trying to figure out what one would be adapting. And in the end, I thought it was the atmosphere. Rather than specifics of the narrative, it was the feeling it gave you as you read it.
But deviating too far from the narrative audiences fell in love with is undoubtedly a risky endeavor. So how does one go about making a good adaptation? Well, therein lies the problem. It shouldn't just be about making a good adaptation. Instead, it should be about making a good film. A film that simultaneously respects the source material, but also changes the work to respect the constraints of the medium itself. And this is no easy feat, but when done well, it does really work.
To adapt is to destroy. It's a process that is quite violent, to go from the book to the screen. The movie is my take on the book, and I try to be as close to the book as possible. But still, I had to change things in order to make it cinematic.
However, when the incentive to make a film is purely commercial, it can often lead to problems.
So that's the big lesson. Don't make a film if it can't be the film you want to make. It's a joke, and a sick joke, and it'll kill you.